The U.S. Congress recently passed the 2023 budget. The $1.7 trillion Consolidated Appropriations Act 2023 was passed on the 23rd of December. It awaits U.S. President Joe Biden's signature, which is expected this week. The 2023 budget also has provisions which support the Tibetan cause. China has already expressed anger at the aid promised by the U.S. to Taiwan. Taiwan saw one of the largest Chinese incursions into its air defense zone after the bill was passed. Taiwan said 71 Chinese jets crossed into its defense zone, but the support for Tibetans has not yet elicited a similar Chinese response. The bill says that the U.S. aid should consider supporting a project to provide housing for Tibetan refugee families in India. India provides sanctuary to tens of thousands of Tibetan refugees, none more famous than the Dalai Lama himself, who has been in India since 1959. India had last reported that the number of Tibetan refugees in India as of the 31st of December 2020 was over 72,000. The U.S. provides aid for Tibetan refugees in India regularly, and it has also maintained that Tibet should not be referred to as a part of China. That will be the case until the Chinese government reaches a negotiated agreement on Tibet with the Dalai Lama or with democratically elected leaders of the Tibetan people. The U.S. has a special coordinator for Tibet who attempts to facilitate this dialogue. The position was established by the Tibetan Policy Act in 2002. The bill also says that until China lets the U.S. establish a consulate in Lhasa, the Department of State should not allow China to open any additional consulates in the U.S. So more details on this by our principal diplomatic correspondent, Siddhant Sibal, sending us this report.
Well, the U.S. spending bill or the budget has been passed by the U.S. Congress. It will be signed into a law when the U.S. President Joe Biden signs it. And it mentions about the American economic support to Tibet and Tibetan cause and construction of houses for Tibetan refugees here in India. There's a large number of Tibetan refugees here in India, including in the national capital Delhi as well. And it's not the first time that the Americans are providing support to Tibetan refugees and the Tibetan government in exile. But it's a continuation of the policy. The policy, basically what Washington wants is that there is conversation between the communist government in Beijing and the representatives of the Tibetan government in exile, and also opening up of a U.S. consulate in Lhasa. These two demands are unlikely to be met by Beijing, but nonetheless the Americans are firm on their demands. In fact, increasingly we have seen the American officials who have been visiting Delhi. They have been meeting representatives of the Tibetan government in exile, and also Dalai Lama as well in Dharamshala. Developments which of course has raised eyebrows in Beijing, but nonetheless we know that the American policy continues. With video journalist Chandrasekhar, Siddhant Sibal for WION in New Delhi.
WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.